Hey, welcome back for another look at the X-Files. Today we're going to be checking out Too Shy, episode 6 of season 3. Debuting November 3rd, 1995, Too Shy follows a serial killer who's kind of a chubby chaser as he targets ladies of the larger persuasion in order to feast upon their fat. The episode begins as young shy Lauren here is pretty nervous as she's finally out on a date with the man she's been having a nice time speaking to online, a man named Virgil Encanto. First red flag, however, is when meeting a random guy you've been talking to online. Don't do it in the middle of nowhere, where absolutely no one will hear you scream. This Encanto fellow seems like a fine chap. He knows Lauren feels insecure about her weight, but none of that matters to him. It's what's inside, just under the surface, that he's most interested in. The following morning, a police officer discovers what's left of Lauren's body and it's looking rather, gooey. Mulder and Scully are called to the scene because generally bodies don't just suddenly gooify. Detective Alan Cross, which sounds kind of badass, has called them in because the body is so melted that they couldn't even make a positive ID on it. Although you could just check the dental records, I don't think calling in the FBI for this was really all that necessary.
This substance, did you find it anywhere else in the car? On the carpet or the upholstery?
When somebody blows their nose and you want to keep it?
This woman's body was completely melted by this slop, and even though she's covered in it, somehow none of it was found anywhere inside the car. So far, that's the most implausible part of this episode. A few months back, Mulder had been given a case of 4 women that suddenly disappeared, and of the 4, only one had actually been found. Although like this most recent victim, she was so decomposed that no formal autopsy could have been performed. It looks like whatever happened to that woman may have picked back up here. While Scully is sent off to find out what this slime is, Mulder is going to see if Lauren had been involved in answering any personal ads, as that seems to be one of the things connecting all of the victims. Encanto moved on from placing personal ads to find his victims, and now he uses the internet chat rooms as a means of luring in lonely women. Luckily, Ellen here is a little hesitant to meet up so quickly, and this just might be what saves her life. For now anyways. He gets rudely interrupted when a woman named Monica comes to the door with a new key for the storage closets that the handyman gave her. That's not the real reason why she's there though. She plays it up like, oh, you're a writer, I'm a writer, trying to make some small talk, but Encanto has zero interest.
You see, I'm a writer too.
What a coincidence. Shouldn't you be off writing or something?
Scully arrives at the morgue and I'm sorry, but I forgot all about this detective and just how blatantly sexist he is. It's so over the top that I cannot help but laugh. You can call me a whatever you want, but this almost feels like something that would have happened in the 1950s. He's so shocked that a woman would be observing an autopsy, and even more shocked when she tells him she's the one performing it. He shouldn't be that shocked, however, because Scully tells someone she's a medical doctor.
You're a medical doctor?
You sound surprised.
No, I guess maybe I am.
I am dying rewatching this because this detective just goes on and on about how he feels about female law enforcement and how because Scully is a woman, a case like this will affect her judgment.
Look, I'm not being sexist here. I'm just being honest.
Where would you like the autopsy report sent?
I know most people would probably get offended over this, but it's so over the top and ridiculous that for me it just becomes comical. I mean, this guy has no idea who he's dealing with, and Scully does not fuck around. Yet he still thinks because she's a woman, she shouldn't be allowed to work on a case such as this. When Scully is finally able to get to work, she notices some more slime coming from Lauren's container. It's not slime though, it's what's left of Lauren, almost like a human puree. Mulder speaks with Jennifer, Lauren's friend, and finds out she had been speaking with the man that killed her sometime prior to her death. She says he seemed like a nice guy, but isn't that usually how it goes? He acts all nice and catfishes you, next thing you know you're a human slushie.
But Too Shy didn't seem to care. It wasn't about sex with him.
Too Shy?
That was his online name.
This Too Shy seemed to have a way with words, which is how he convinced not just Lauren, but also her friend that he was a good stand-up guy. Jennifer saved some of the messages Too Shy wrote to Lauren and goes to grab them from Mulder. Mulder contacts Scully to tell her he thinks their guy has moved on from the papers to online chat rooms as he opened his account with one of his previous victims' credit cards. Mulder meets up with Scully so she can show him this slime or whatever it is. It seems to eat through everything, including bone. As best as Scully can discern, this substance is basically stomach acid, except at least 2 times as strong.
In the results of your chemical analysis, did you find anything missing?
Missing?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Even though Lauren is a human Slurpee, she didn't appear to be missing any of her organs. However, she was missing a large portion of her fat cells, over 40 pounds of it to be exact. The woman Encanto has been speaking to, Ellen, is getting ready to meet him for the first time. However, her friend Joanne isn't really too sure of the whole thing. She doesn't think her friend should be going out and meeting a random guy from online chat rooms, and Ellen should probably listen to her. Surprisingly, she does take her friend's advice, and poor Encanto gets stood up. The only other logical thing for him to do now is to procure the services of a lady of the night.
I think you have a house for you, baby. Thanks.
I don't know what's worse, picking up a prostitute for sex, or picking one up to drain them of their fat. Both options seem pretty gross to me. This lady has some class though. She doesn't kiss on the first date. Blowjob, sure, but kissing? No way, mister. He gets a little aggressive with her and she straight up claws a good chunk of skin right off his hand. It's like he's covered in tissue paper. He gets interrupted during his feeding by another lady of the night and her date, and it's funny because the guy runs, not because of the dead prostitute, but mostly because he doesn't want to get caught trying to hook up with one. The next morning, the agents are on the scene. The prostitute named Holly McClane, ex-wife of John McClane, really hit hard times after the events of Die Hard. She's covered in that same acid that covered Lauren, however it doesn't appear to be melting her as quickly as it did Lauren. Mulder might have something they can use though, because remember those letters Lauren's friend was going to get for him? Well, it turns out many of them have parts from Italian poems that can only be found in books that would only be accessible to someone who was a teacher or a graduate student. So at least they're starting to build a trail.
Here's something else that might help. The killer should have an identifiable wound pattern from this.
Encanto is busy cutting off the loose skin on his hand when he is interrupted once again, not by Monica this time, but instead a package from the publishing house. He has to go down and sign for it, so he quickly wraps his hand. This is where he runs into Jessie, the daughter of Monica, and I swear, this woman has a radar or something because she knows when Encanto is nearby and she pounces. She tries making more small talk and even tries asking him out, but she gets shot down. And because her feelings get hurt, she then takes it out on her daughter.
I wish you weren't always so rude to him.
I don't care, he creeps me out.
Mother of the year, people. Scully and the detective are working on who may have access to those books when Mulder arrives with the results from the skin that was taken from the prostitute. The skin didn't come up with any match of any known offender, but it did reveal something else. There were no oils or essential fatty acids found in the samples, but it does give Mulder a theory.
From a dry skin sample, you're concluding what? That he's some kind of a fat-sucking vampire?
So Mulder thinks that their man is going around and trying to replenish the oils and fatty tissue that for whatever reason, his body doesn't seem to produce itself. The detective meets up with the agents to tell them they've found 38 faculty members in the area that may have access to those books. So they're going to split up the search and investigate each and every person on the list. Scully asks if she can brief everyone before they get started, and the detective just looks at her and hesitates, because you know he's thinking, how can a woman possibly brief men on how to search for a killer when she's supposed to be in the kitchen?
You have mail.
Encanto gets a new message from Ellen, who apologizes for standing him up. She hopes he can forgive her and maybe they can try again? Another knock at his door, and it's actually the detective, who's there as part of the search. Although things don't look good for the detective when he notices Encanto's hand. Back at the police station, and Scully tells Mulder Detective Cross hasn't checked in some time, but I'm thinking this may be karma for how he treated Scully earlier.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have...
It's a kind of eczema. I've had it since I was a kid.
That night, Ellen actually goes out with Encanto, and because his car is in the shop, which is rather convenient, she offers to drive him home. Meanwhile, Monica wants Encanto to read her poetry she's been writing, but we all know she wants a lot more than that. This lady is very thirsty. Because he's not home though, she decides to just let herself in. Encanto and Ellen arrive at his place and he wants to take things upstairs. She's a little reluctant to go, but noticing there's someone in his place, he quickly puts an end to their date.
You know what? You're absolutely right. It's late. I have a lot of work I have to do. Excuse me.
Typical man doesn't get what he wants and just takes off with barely a goodbye. Monica snoops around his place and finds the body of the detective melting in the bathtub. And now, because she just couldn't leave things alone, her daughter has no mother. This woman's journey through the X-Files truly has been a fascinating one. First, she was Toombs' defense counsel, and even though she won for her client, he began killing again, and because of the guilt, she quit her job to become a full-time stay-at-home mom. Next, she lets a death fetishist in her home around her daughters, and when her alcoholic husband finds out, he kicks her out along with their one blind daughter, because let's be real, he was always kind of a jerk. Then, struggling to make ends meet managing an apartment building, she ends up getting killed by a man that likes to suck the fat out of people, all because she wanted to get laid. Because of all of this, her daughter is now on her own, and possibly next on Encanto's menu.
What is it, Jesse?
Do you know where my mom is?
Your mother? No.
Encanto assures the young girl that her mother will be just fine. However, earlier in the episode, it's established the girl has a keen sense of smell and knows he's not telling the truth. The agents are calling all around town looking for what happened to the detective until a 911 call comes in from Jesse and from the same apartment building the detective had went to earlier. They bust inside his place and find the bodies of the detective and Monica, but no sign of Encanto. The poor girl knew her mother was dead because she could smell her perfume. They set up an APB on the lookout for Encanto because, as he told Jesse, he was going to be flying to New York for a few days. Along with that, they also have a sketch of what he might look like.
His name is Virgil Encanto. At least that's what it says on his rental agreement, but other than that, there's no record that the guy even exists.
Mulder doesn't think he's leaving though. It's possible he's staying in town and will be meeting with one of his contacts. They check Encanto's computer, but he wiped that entire hard drive clean. Although most people don't know, this doesn't actually get rid of everything, and you can recover lost or deleted files, which is exactly what they're going to try and do. In the meantime, Ellen wakes up with a clearly distressed Encanto who wants to come inside real bad. She barely knows the guy, and letting him inside wouldn't be the smartest thing in the world. Ellen thinks he's just there because he wants a little action, but she has no idea it's much worse than that.
Thank you.
Ellen locks the door because there are freaks out there and you don't want them getting inside. The agents manage to recover the screen names everyone in Encanto had been speaking to, so they decide to send the sketch along with a message warning each of the ladies he's contacted that he's very dangerous. They've also called each of the women, and 3 are already missing and 2 never answered, Ellen being one of the women not to answer her phone. The agents decide to check on the 2 that didn't answer their phones just to make sure they're okay.
Ellen?
Encanto comes in Ellen's room just as she gets the message from the FBI. Ellen claims she was just emailing her friend about what was going on, but a reflection in a mirror shows Encanto that she's actually looking at a warning that was sent out by the FBI. The agents arrive and bust their way inside Ellen's place. Encanto takes off running out a window, and Scully manages to get that slime off Ellen's face before she's suffocated to death. Mulder heads off after Encanto before he can claim any more victims.
Now put your hands up and step out where I can see you. Just don't shoot me, man.
Except he wasn't chasing Encanto, it was just some kid spray painting. I swear, if Encanto is still in the apartment with Scully... Oh, god damn it. He bashes her around a bit, but then she comes back with a back kick and a kick to the knee. Scully goes for a knee to the chest, but he counters with a single leg takedown, putting Scully on her back. She manages to push him off with the help of some scissors, but this guy doesn't go down easy. And Ellen does not mess around. Encanto doesn't die from his gunshot wound and is instead locked up. However, he's looking rather ashy. Maybe try a new moisturizer. In total, it looks like Encanto killed at least 47 women, and Scully, she looks pissed. I think if she could just finish him off then and there, she would. Too Shy is a good episode. I think partly because Virgil Encanto feels familiar, like another Toombs or Donnie Faster. I think he's equally as creepy and often overlooked when it comes to Monster of the Week antagonists. There was some criticism levied against the episode for its treatment of women, but I don't think the episode would have the same effect if Encanto were going after both sexes. He could have gone after anyone, sure, but I think the point of the episode was partly about the dangers of online chat rooms. The entire idea was fairly new at the time and made for an interesting story. These days, speaking with random people online has become part of the day-to-day norm, but I would argue it's even more dangerous today than it was back then. There was also some pushback to how the detective treated Scully, but like I said, he's so sexist that the entire thing just becomes comical and feels like it came out of the 1950s. Too Shy currently has a 7.4 on IMDb, and for me, I would go with a 7. Jeff Vlaming would write this episode along with the Season 3 episode Hell Money. His original pitch for the episode focused on a killer who would suck the body oils from his victims. This was later changed to body fat because it didn't feel visceral enough. And Kanto himself was first described as being like a Phantom of the Opera-esque monster, a recluse that would keep to himself because of his disfiguration and only come out when he needed to feed. Another idea they had for him was making him some kind of a butcher. He would hack away the fat from his victims with his cleaver. I would have loved this butcher idea because it reminds me of the butcher from the first Diablo video game, which always scared the hell out of me as a kid.
Fresh meat.
Eventually they settled on making him look more like a normal guy. His unassuming nature would be easier for him to find victims than if he was some freak of nature. The content of the episode was almost seen as being too repulsive. David Nutter, the director, made sure to throw in as many gross out gags as he could because after the episode the host set a new high bar, they wanted to try and top it. But I'm not sure anything can top the host for grossness. Well, not yet anyways. Frank Spotnitz was worried that maybe they were going a little too far with this one, but all it took was a little convincing from Chris Carter when he told him it would be a fun, old-fashioned sort of X-File. This episode would be the first to feature David's new body double, Steve Kiziak. Steve had just moved to Vancouver and was looking to be an electrical apprentice when one of the producers spotted him coming out of a Starbucks and noticed how much he looked and moved like David. They asked if he wanted the position to play his body double, and the rest is history. When they filmed the scene where Mulder and Scully burst into Ellen's apartment, Steve and the other body doubles actually burst into the wrong door, interrupting a dinner party that was being hosted by the person living there. The acidic slime that Encanto spits on his victims is actually a veterinary product called J-Lube. It was mixed with some other products that, while safe for consumption, was rather disgusting for the actors to deal with. The story for this episode bears a resemblance to the very first Star Trek episode, The Man Trap. In it, the crew are attacked by a shape-shifting alien that kills by removing the salt from the victim's body. Detective Alan Cross, the lovable sexist, was played by American actor James Handy. He's mostly a character actor playing small roles in films like Arachnophobia, Jumanji, and Logan. His most well-known role is likely Arthur Devlin in Alias. Catherine Paolini played Ellen, and she doesn't have very many credits to her name. Her last role was way back in 2004 on an episode of Judging Amy. But besides that, she mostly plays background characters like Doctor or Passenger. This most likely might be the most prolific role of her career. Mr. Virgil Encanto himself was played by Timothy Carhart. Now, thanks to making videos like these, I finally know why this guy has always looked so familiar. He's the damn violinist from Ghostbusters that Dana claims is just a friend. I have seen Ghostbusters several hundred times, and no, I am not exaggerating, and I never noticed who he was, but something always stuck in the back of my head when watching this episode, so now I finally know. And I can finally rest easy now that that mystery has finally been solved. Timothy has had a fairly decent career, mostly small character roles, and a few recurring in shows like 24 and Island Sun. He's probably best known now for his role on the hit show Yellowstone as A.G. Stewart. Too Shy is a good episode. Virgil Encanto is a pretty creepy character. I can definitely recommend this episode if you've never seen it, or if you want to go back and rewatch. Next up, the agents make their way to an army hospital where a bunch of strange deaths are occurring, and the only suspect is a quadriplegic in the episode The Walk. So what are your thoughts on Too Shy? Let me know down in the comments because I love hearing what you have to say. Anyways, that's all for today. I hope you fantastic people are all having a great weekend, and please, stay spooky.
His kiss is deadly.
We're dealing with a serial murderer who's using an online service to attract his victims.
And Friday,
We're looking for some kind of genetically different human being, a creature.
he's got a date with Agent Scully. Our brand new X-Files, Friday.